Record on the cloud.
Yes.
Perfect. Okay, and let me, well, it doesn't allow me to record on the computer, so it will be, you are going to share the file, okay?
Okay.
Very good. Okay. Hello, everybody. Welcome to our second webinar on behalf of the Intercultural Communication Intersection, or ICIS TESOL. Welcome to our first ever webinar series. My name is Andrea Lipka. I am the co-chair of our team. And thank you all for being involved in this event as presenters, organizers, attendees, and also event planners. We could not do this event without you. For today's event, we had 100 people who have signed up. And we are also grateful to our ICIS leadership team, Roxana, Leslie, Josie, Amina, Sharon, Barbara, Ramin, and many, many others who have wholeheartedly support this webinar series, Voices from the Classroom, Teaching in a Time of War, Experiences of English language teachers and students in Ukraine. Please note that this webinar is being recorded, and those who have signed up will receive the recording. And typically, we gather every year for one Voices of the Classroom event to discuss what's going on in the classrooms worldwide regarding intercultural communication. But as I mentioned earlier, due to very popular interest in this event, we have scheduled two events. So this is the second, this is the part two of our series. Um, And if you can please add in the chat box, where are you from? And if you would like to share your email, especially if you are a presenter, please do so. If you have any questions, please include it in the chat box. And we start this webinar with a quote from one of our presenters, because I think that this quote particularly illustrates the ways as we support our students in their educational journey, even in a time of war. And thank you to the presenters once again who have accepted to share what is going on in their classrooms. It is important that you share your voices and experiences. This is our agenda for today. So we are going to provide briefly an overview of our organization, and then we will continue with 5-minute presentations, and we will end the webinar with the Q&A session. The 5-minute presentations will have 7 presenters today that will cover topics from trauma-informed teaching practices and, more importantly, teachers' voices and reflections on their experiences. So let's now talk about what is our intersession about and how to join us. We are a group of teachers, practitioners, researchers, scholars, professors, administrators who are very interested in the intercultural communication topic. And we offer free webinars, coffee hours, academic panels, lighting talks. We also have newsletter issues, so feel free to reach out on social media and contact us if you want to be involved or you want to publish your lesson plan or reflection piece. And this is how you join us. You can reach out to TESOL International. You can also join us from My TESOL, which is TESOL International's portal. And you can also follow us on social media. I highlighted YouTube because that's our newest addition, new social media channel. And we are going to include there as well our webinars and coffee hour talks, including today's recording. So these are the presenters that will be talking today. But before we go into the presenters, Barbara, my co-chair, would you like to speak about our upcoming event?
Yes, thank you very much, Andrea, and hello to everybody. I'm so glad, of today's, webinar that we are holding. Anyway, the next month, on the 10th, it's again a Friday, we are going to host a very well-known scholar and book writer on interculturality. She is called Manuela Gülhern, Manuela Maria Gülhern. She comes from the University of Coimbra, and she's going to talk. She's very well known because she has been writing books, I think now for 30 years, and has an amazing production of scholarly reviews and articles. And she's going to talk about a very interesting thing, and her title will be Glocademics, which is Global Languages and Intercultural Responsibility in a Post-Colonial Global Academic World, and how this matters to TESOLers and to people who are interested in interculturality. Of course, on my TESOL, we will post, how to say, a flyer, and please do join us if you can, because I'm sure that Manuela also will be as interesting as she always is. Thank you.
Thank you, much appreciated. Okay, so we can now start with the presenters. And once again, we appreciate what each of you contributes to the field of intercultural communication and TESOL. We will start with Olena. I will stop sharing my screen and I will allow her to share her presentation. Olena?
Yes, just give me one quick second.
Sure.
And yeah, that's it. So hi, everyone. My name is Olena Tanchuk, and it's my pleasure and honor to be here today and share some of my experience teaching in wartime. And it's also a big responsibility to open our webinar and be the first today. But anyway, I work in different institutions in the US and the Ukraine, and still today I will present the Access Micro Scholarship Program supported by the US Department of State. And I will talk about how we managed to resume and continue online classes with students from Mariupol, the city you might have heard a lot about recently. And my presentation is called Creating Brave Spaces for ESL Students from Mariupol. And the concept of the safe or brave spaces refers to an environment where everyone feels comfortable expressing themselves and participating fully without fear of attack, ridicule, or denial of experience. And this is the environment that we educators are trying to create for our learners nowadays. And a time of war can be scary for our students, mainly because terrorism has brought fear so close to their homes, and there are so many uncertain events, and for them, both for them and for us educators. But the good news that just as we learn reading and writing, we can also understand the skill of resilience, the ability to adapt well in the face of adversity, trauma, tragedy, threats, or even significant sources of stress. And what are some tips that can help us to teach resilience? And I would like to share my experience, but I also want to tell that we should remember that each child's journey along the road to resilience will be different, and that your knowledge of your students will guide you even better. And therefore, I just share some of my tips, but please feel free to adapt and to hear your students first. So to cut a long story short, there is a non-exhaustive list of ideas for adapting your teaching. So my first question after we resumed classes in April was how to discuss the topics such as my home, my family, or my friends with students from Mariupol in particular. And I came up with some ideas. First of all, I would suggest removing topics if they are not too important. Postpone for a particular time or change the order of trigger topics. I would say to say massage your curriculum. Make specific topics impersonal. change the focus. For example, instead of talking about your house, or we could talk about our dream house or cartoon characters one. Integrate interactive role plays into your lessons. There might be some pitfalls here, but we will not cover them in my presentation today. But anyway, role plays was a good opportunity for us to be distracted and to think about something else, and not a work on cognitive development and think of self-regulation. And there are some links for some activities and articles, and they will be shared in the chat, so you can use them, you can check them, and if you're interested, so please feel free to incorporate them too in your classroom environment. And the last idea that I would like to present on this slide is create and inspire. And with this being said, I'd like to dwell on the creativity of resilience. The research says that the unique capacity to think creatively puts humans in an exceptional position to respond in original, flexible, and effective ways to environmental threats and changing conditions. And on the slide, you can see some of their artifacts we created with the learners together during this period of time. So the first one is the website, the Ukrainian Academy of Cultural Diplomacy. Students were also experimenting with comics and created an image of Mamai. In some of our first classes, we reread the book, The Little Prince, and we created new planets, so to say, our new safe spaces. So I know that in part one, also a lot of my colleagues spoke about creativity. So that was really a magic wand for our classes. And as we support the idea that no child should be part of the war ever, we know that taking care of the social emotional well-being of learners and thus educators, we should remember about ourselves too, is vital. And knowing that our children from Mariupol experience drastic and horrifying situations, we wanted to make sure that our classes are first of all places or spaces for being together, supporting, grieving, sharing, and encouraging each other. And for this, we were checking the temperature, so to say, yes, checking the temperature, regulating, and using something similar to such activities like you can see in the screen. Yeah, so like stress check or self check, reflection. So we did different activities with them, so to understand how they feel, what the emotional condition is now. So we worked on the strategy, supporting their mental health and well-being of learners through connection and continuity. And then with the time, at the end of the day, our learners have become so resilient and strong that now when they hear sirens or missiles, they continue living and resisting in the new reality. And here you can see a typical dialogue that could happen between my learners and them. So can you repeat that, please? There is a missile or a drone attack, or some drones or bombs flying above my head. So I couldn't really catch you because of the noise. And they quietly sit, and I'm so proud of them because I'm not in Ukraine and they haven't been in Ukraine during some period of time. So, but my learners are, and they're so brave. Or they could say something like, sorry, I saw a rocket or something in the ear. And I was distracted for a second, but no, it's us, the SU, which means Ukrainian Armed Forces, and everything is fine. So let's keep going. So that's why every time I'm so proud of them, how they sustained everything. And my final slide is devoted to some more examples of artifacts my colleagues and the learners created. And you can see, observe, and you can see their dreams that they created for this new year. So this is their vision board, and you can see, so of course, all of them dream about peace and coming back to their hometowns. So in a nutshell, teachers were not prepared to teach during a war, and now this is our job, and the job of our educators from Ukraine has become more critical and challenging than ever. The future of our country depends on education, we understand this, and with this in mind, Ukrainian educators, teachers, professionals clearly understand that their mission is to form a new worldview. So it is our responsibility now to ensure safe or brave spaces for every learner. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Katie Hallahan Niginski. Katie?
Yes, good morning, everyone. Just share my screen here.
Sure.
Thank you so much for having me. And Elena, that was really beautiful. I really enjoyed what you were sharing, and I'm going to echo a few of your points. So I am in Los Angeles, California. I'm the executive director of the International Women's Resource Center. We provide education to adult refugee and immigrants in California, but we also have programming in Europe for displaced Ukrainians and Ukrainians within Ukraine. So all of my students are adults. So there's two kind of main issues, and Elena touched on both of them. There are logistical issues teaching right now, the main one being issues with the internet, of course. So I think here the key is flexibility, right? We just have to be understanding and be able to adapt our lesson plans as needed. I do have we have 3 different groups with International Women's Resource Center. We have students that are inside of Ukraine that are in one class. We have students that are displaced within Europe that are in a different class. And we have the Ukrainian students that are in California in a different class. And that's because they have really different needs and different aims, even though they're all coming from the same language. They're in different points as adults in their lives. So for the students that are in Ukraine, we have more of these logistical issues, of course, with the internet. And those classes really need to be more of a distraction than for the students who are displaced within Europe and for the students that are in California. The students in California have to start acclimating to the US, and they're thinking about workforce goals. The students that are in Europe are thinking about like making connections within this diaspora. So we have different aims. With the class that I teach for adults who are in Ukraine, I really try to think of it as like a fun, safe space. So it's a distraction from everything else, because when there is so much heaviness going on, they don't also want a very intense English class. Which brings me to questions of content. And Elena touched on a lot of the things that I was thinking as well. The third point I have here is making sure that you're incorporating trauma-informed care. And I know TESOL has a lot of really great materials to read on and on and on about trauma-informed care, but she touched on it so beautifully and succinctly. There are a lot of issues like talking about the family or where you're from that can be very triggering, and best to either postpone, or if you need to talk, of course we need to teach family vocabulary, but you can do it in a way that is creative or imaginative or using characters, so you're not asking people about their specific family. The first bullet point I have on here, I see my class with my adult Ukrainian students in Ukraine as half support group and half silliness. And I tend to plan 2 lessons for each class, because depending on what's going on that day, they come into the class with a different mode. So sometimes they come in and you can tell they need to talk and they need to get it off their shoulders, off their chest. And I let them lead the way. And then the class is directed in more of a support group vibe. And then other days you can tell they need to disconnect and unplug. And we go full silliness, all games. And of course it's English learning. That's why we're there. But I try to pull out the funnest elements that I have ever used in English classes to make sure that it's a really, again, safe, fun space for their time. And the second point I have here is mindfulness exercises. I start every class with a mindfulness exercise so that hopefully they can, if it's a day we're going to indulge in some silliness, that they can leave all of everything else at the door when they come into our virtual classroom. We do have a page, Curiosity Literacy. If you follow on Facebook or Instagram, every Monday we post mindfulness exercises for the classroom. But my favorite one is to have them make a list of all the things that are weighing on their mind, and then ask them to circle anything they can control in the next hour when we're going to be in class. And usually they say, teacher, I can't circle anything. I can't control any of it. So I say, let it go and let's have some fun. And then again, the key word being flexibility, right? Because depending on the day, they may or may not have solid internet access. They may or may not be in the mood to be silly, or they may be in the mood to be serious. So we need to be able to acclimate quickly. And that is, I think, my 5 minutes. So I'm gonna hand it back over.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Anastasia Hans. Anastasia, do you want to share, or do you want me to pull up your slides?
I would like to share.
Okay, please.
So first of all, dear colleagues, it's a great honor and pleasure for me to share my experience with you today. Thank you very much for such a wonderful opportunity. So the war caught me as a graduate student of Chernivtsi National University in Ukraine and as an English teacher at one of Ukrainian online language schools, along with the unwelcome wail of air sirens and explosions came despair and a complete lack of understanding of moving forward. The question went through my head, how do I continue teaching my students? Initially, it seemed that everything went down the drain. Many educational institutions in Ukraine were badly damaged in the early days of the war, and those that survived instantly turned into volunteer aid centers, bomb shelters for citizens, or started hosting internally displaced families. Students have been actively involved in helping refugees and Ukrainian defending forces. Many of the male students joined the ranks of the territorial defense of Ukraine. Therefore, the educational process could be only resumed online. Well, and moving on to the main topic of my presentation, it should be noted that before joining my first classes since the beginning of the war, my teaching practice also consisted of a transnational context, because before the start of the full-scale invasion in 2022, I taught online not only the students from Ukraine, but also citizens from countries of the post-Soviet space, particularly from the aggressor country and Belarus. And ironically, the first person I've got the supporting message from in the morning of the 21st of February was my student from St. Petersburg. And it was the moment when I faced the personal dilemma of my teaching. Should I honor my pedagogic relationship, or should I honor my citizenship responsibilities and cease teaching as citizens of their aggressor state terrorizing my country? The 24th of February was the date when my pedagogic responsibilities and citizens' responsibilities collided, and a difficult but a clear decision needed to be made. Education cannot be outside the politics, and despite the good relationship with a student, it is impossible to continue teaching the person from an invading country when your fellow citizens are dying and the cities of Ukraine are being flattered. Education is also a battlefield, and it was my small protest, a kind of sanctions introduced by the simple language teacher against the aggressor country. And it was one more way to isolate the enemy. And I am grateful to the online school I worked at, because it immediately reacted to the invasion and introduced a new policy against the invading country and Belarus. And later, another question arose: is there a point of resuming teaching my local Ukrainian students? Because they were stressed, worn out, and psychologically traumatized by what was happening in Ukraine. However, our Ukrainian people, they are just amazing and unconquerable. And some of my students managed to find salvation in resuming studying English. So for some students, studying English has become a way to take control of themselves. Others found how to maintain optimism and how to return to life before February the 24th. None of my training had prepared me for my new role of helping students, because one day you are teaching present perfect and the next day you are trying to support your students. However, I derived a universal formula for myself, not to escape the new realities, but to adapt to new teaching conditions. I aim to help my students to be competent enough to speak out in English to a wider audience, so that the world knows what evil all countries are fighting against today. And as Volodymyr Zelensky, the president of Ukraine, said, ordinary people in every country of the world can also do their part. So teaching is my part and the weapon towards the victory. Thank you very much for your attention, and glory to Ukraine.
Thank you so much. Our next speaker is Alla Friedrich. Adla, would you like me to share, or you prefer to share your screen?
I would like you to share. We'll be very thankful for your sharing.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much for opportunity to share my ideas concerning resources during the wartime in Ukraine. The last semester has been particularly stressful and pessimistic, as teaching here in Ukraine now is a true challenge. Challenge to explain the new material between the missile attacks and blackouts. Challenge to stay strong and joyful around students and school children who feel scared and stressed, but do not know how to express. No one will return to them their youth and childhood as it was stolen from them. Recently, I've seen a copybook with printed questions of the 8th grade students of a secondary school. There was the question about future professions, about their future choices, what profession they'd like to choose and why. And among the answers was such one: I think I have no future. Teaching has so long been one of my biggest passions, but doing my job in such circumstances makes it devastating. I truly wish no one could ever experience that. For 11 months, we are all constantly in a state of stress. News from the front, air alarms, the threat of nuclear explosion, and new large-scale attack now, and the constant fear of the unknown. It's difficult to plan the future. When it is difficult to work, and it is difficult to continue life, despite all the productivity and attitude, sometimes it's very difficult for me to pull myself together. At first, we were waiting to the end of the war without planning our life, without planning our future. We postponed our life. We always answered, after the war ends, after the victory. But the biggest mistake is postponed life because of the war. It is self-destruction. In fact, we live our lives to the fullest, even when we are looking to the diesel engine instead of new shoes or dress for the upcoming spring. There is nothing postponed. Everything is as it is, and we have to live it as it is. Everything happens in our heart. As we adjust ourselves, so it will be. We are not passive sufferers. We are related to those processes that are happening right now. We are the force that moves them. We consciously acquire the experience that we never wanted to have. And yes, the terrible winter is no longer somewhere ahead, but outside the window. And the bigger part of this winter has passed. So I understand that life goes on, and it is worth continuing to work, to study, develop, and rest. Because if not now, then when? Recently, I've asked my colleagues and coworkers where they draw resources. Some of them answered that they didn't know where and how to get these resources. So I decided to present mine. In order to restore my resources and move on. Simply, but very effective things help me. Can you change the slide, please?
Sure.
Yes, my resources. Daily work and results at work give an awareness that what cool things we do with my team. At such moments, I feel like I'm a part of something big and I'm very excited about it. Motivation to contribute and help the country's economy. I try to transform every anger I have into helping charitable foundation or local meetings, and it works, probably for the best. One of the very important moment, quality weekend rest. Resources are not really internal, so they needed to be constantly renewed. For this, I practice rest without news. If the situation cannot be changed, then the attitude towards it should be changed. Besides, I practice to spend my free time with my family as peace, mutual understanding, harmony, and trust in the family allow me to feel safe and have some control over the situation. This fills me from the inside. Some of my colleagues set about keeping silence as a way to rest, and I support them. We started to value silence. During 11 months, we have developed such an ability in ourselves to be a locator, to listen while sleeping, to distinguish different dangerous sounds outdoors. Our ears are always working, and sirens, to some extent, we have got used to them. Even the dog in my yard had learned to howl like a siren. I even had to look up the map of sirens several times to understand whether it was a siren alarm or these dogs howl. So keeping silence is a way to renew the resources despite how strange it sounds. Through all these 11 months, we kept our enthusiasm for life, fulfilling these and trying to be brave. And it was daily work, contribution, and rest that helped me stay alive and optimistically oriented. As for my resources and my life experience during this period, I started with free online courses for Ukrainian refugees. They knew they need English for their well-being and adaptation in European countries. Then I applied for a scientific grant program. I was a co-researcher of a grant program of Fund Kostyushka, Freedom Starts With Your Mind, investigating experiences of Ukrainian refugee students and their parents, caretakers with teaching and learning in Polish primary and secondary school. We were interested in exploring the experiences of Ukrainian refugee students with different educational and linguistic backgrounds and their parents who arrived in Poland after the 24th February. The investigation was, among others, focused on social emotional issues, knowledge, linguistic support, challenges, and interculturality. Then I took part in an educational program of the European Union, Knowledge, Education and Development, based in Warsaw University, aimed to support Ukrainian refugees in Poland. And I feel busy and tired, but not devastated as it was in the beginning. So keeping these simple rules motivates me to live, to work, and to support each other. And in that, I would like to thank you for your support, and I highly appreciate the opportunity to share my resources during the war and to your support. Glory to Ukraine.
Thank you, Alla. Much appreciated. And our next speakers are Ilona Huszti and Ilona Lechner.
Yes, Andrea, could you please share the slides for us?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, thank you. Hi, everyone. Thank you, dear organizers, for providing this opportunity to sound our experiences and feelings of the situation we have been working in for almost a year. We are a group of teachers and teacher trainers at the Finance Faculty, the Second Transcarpathian Hungarian College of Higher Education in Berakova in Ukraine. Let me introduce my colleagues, Erzsébet Bárány, Ilona Lechner, and Marta Fabian, and I'm Ilona Huszti. We teach English, German, and Ukrainian at our college. And at the college, we train future English, German, Ukrainian, and Hungarian teachers. We provide courses at the bachelor and master levels. Next slide, please. Transcarpathia, where we live, is the westernmost territory of Ukraine. Currently, it is considered to be the most peaceful nook in the country. However, we also feel the physical and mental consequences that this war causes. At present, in Transcarpathia, the daily power shortage means 11 to 16 hours off the grid without electricity. During blackouts, there is no heating, but more importantly, the internet is not accessible via Wi-Fi. Because of all this, we feel uncertain about the future. We are anxious, desperate, and disillusioned. We are very often angry and at times even hopeless. It is much more difficult to teach in such circumstances. Within a shorter period of time, we have to teach the same amount of material. So we try to make detailed presentations and guide for our students and guide them how to become more autonomous learners. Google services that we learned to use during the pandemic have become handy and help a lot. Next slide, please.
The war, I would like to continue. The war was greatly affected our teaching. Before February the 24th, an ordinary class at our college lasted 90 minutes. Now the schedule cannot most often be kept, and there are daily air raid alarms. The official regulation says that in such cases, both students and teachers have to move to the bomb shelter, which takes some time. So the teaching process is disrupted and interrupted. Students try to do their best to cope with the difficulties and challenges, but especially for the freshmen is not easy. Next slide, please.
Yes, Ilona, my colleague,
Yes.
Ilona.
Thank you. We had to adapt to the new situation. First of all, we tried to get accustomed to the nerve-wracking sound of sirens. In addition, we started to prepare our lesson plans in 4 variants. A, if there is electricity, Wi-Fi, and no air raid alarm, and we can have a normal class. B, if there is electricity, Wi-Fi, but also air raid alarm is on. C, if there is no electricity and Wi-Fi and no air raid alarms. And D, if there is no electricity, no Wi-Fi, and there is air raid alarm too. We are more flexible with homework and deadlines. We give less home assignment for the next class and more for the next week. Also, to avoid attrition, we keep contact with our correspondent students via the internet using Google Classroom. Next slide, please.
It's already on.
Yes. And Marta.
So we consider that in this situation, time management, flexibility, and tolerance are more important than ever. We try to plan our time to adjust to the outages, and we have to take into account the air raid alarms as well. So now we use gadgets and ebooks more frequently. Working in a shelter is really challenging, so we prepare extra tasks both in Google Classroom and in paper format that can be done silently and checked quickly or maybe later in case 2 or 3 groups happen to be in the same shelter. Sometimes we are lucky and we can have a traditional lesson if one group is only in one shelter. But despite of all the difficulties, we have learned one important thing. It is that nothing is impossible and there is a solution for even the most hopeless situation. We don't need lost generation. So we had to learn to confront the situation. We are optimistic and believe that we teachers should never relinquish or lose optimism, because we ought to be the models for our students, and we have to give hope and future to the young generation. And we all consider that where there is a will, there is a way. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you. And our next presenter is Ilona. Ilona, do you want me to forward your slides, or you want to share your own slides?
I think I can do that myself. Thank you. Do you see that?
Yes.
So my name is Ilona Yurcheshin, and I'm honored to present Ivan Franko University and tell you about the experience of teaching students in the group where part of them are from the front line and part of them have been lucky never to see a rocket in their life. And what challenges and benefits, surprisingly, I found, from such experience. So the first one is air alarm starts, and you have the class that is divided into two. Part of that is both white, their hands are shaking, and they are probably psychologically back at home where the rockets are flying and probably destroying their house. And the other part that is already okay with the siren and that is already accustomed and that doesn't see such a problem from that. So what do you do in this situation when you have the class that half of it is terrified and the other half is okay? So you start talking, and what I noticed that communication really helps. And you start talking about the problems that appeared. And as a teacher of English literature, I have to kind of make it together with literature. So I just take the piece of discussion that we have at the moment and communicate about the problems that are here in this text and that are that they understand is the problem with them. And from that point, I realized that students are quite motivated, because when you say that, do you realize why we are here? The answer is, of course, because of armed forces. And after that question, you can ask whatever you want from the students, and they will do, and they will find time, find mood, find energy, whatever you want from them. Then, of course, the other problem was that part of the group came unprepared because they were preparing for the NOA test, but it didn't happen. So they came unprepared for the English literature. And the other part came absolutely not prepared because they were worried and concerned with how to stay alive. No exams were on their minds. So what to do in this way? I found that fun really works. And if you try to make it a little bit fun, and then you start talking about Anglo-Saxon literature, if you make Grendel look like Shrek, this type of language, the language of fun, any person can understand. So it helped me a lot. And I realized that it could be helpful for you. And one more thing is socializing became extremely important for everyone. And it's, of course, as well fun. So when I asked them to go and visit ballet based on the piece of literature that we have finished recently, none of them even asked the extra points for that, How is it to study during the war? All of them, some students share that, of course, they cannot concentrate. They're always in constant need to scroll the news. The other students share the experience of evacuation train when the curtains are closed. You are not able to use phones. There is no light. No one is talking. And then you come, it's the 1st of September, and the other students expect you to laugh because it's the holiday. And then the other students say the thing that unites all of them in the class is, of course, the understanding and appreciation of what our armed forces did. So all of them say, I appreciate every bit of information I am given now, because you never know when you will need it. And I cannot give up because my army didn't give up. So I cannot do that as well. I have no right to let the Russians take my dreams away. So how do we actually adapt to such situation? Of course, teaching in a bomb shelter is not a good experience, but you can always use mobile data and it helps you as well. I realized that my stress level reduces when I meet my students. And we can have no light, we can have no electricity, we can be in the bomb shelter at that time. But one thing unites all Ukrainians, teachers, students, the army. We are still fighting, and we realize we have to do that in order to stay alive. So after all of that, I have developed a lot of techniques how to cope with the problem of the war. But one thing still concerns me, and I still cannot answer when my students ask me. So they say that they study when it's dark, they study when it's air alarm outside, they study when it's cold, they study when the news make them sick, they study when Russians laughed at them at spending the night in the shelter. And after all of that, Russians still get the services, still get the opportunity to study in Europe, to study with teachers, to study, to have all the other services that Ukrainian students are not being able to get right now. So this question is the only one that I'm still not able to answer, and still not able to explain to them. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you. And we have our last speaker, Tracy Menon. Tracy, would you like me to share your slides or?
No, if
Okay.
I can do it,
Sure.
if that's okay. Is it showing now?
Yes.
Okay, great. So first, I'd like to thank you for the opportunity. It is an honor to be able to speak with you today. Last week and today's presentations, they are all so touching. They really get me here. So I really appreciate what everybody has been able to share. And I teach from the safety and the comfort of my home in Northern Virginia, so it's very different from many of you. I teach with English language programs through the U.S. Department of State, and I absolutely love what I do. What is it like to teach during a war for us? Well, of course, it's challenging. Sometimes it's disheartening, especially when students tell me about their and their families' challenges. Their stories are very sad, as everybody knows. And everybody has talked about the lack of electricity, technology glitches, connectivity because of the incessant bombings on the infrastructure. And yet it is so incredibly rewarding to teach Ukrainian students. I have learned so much from the students and the faculty, sharing so much together, not just pedagogy in Ukraine or the culture of Ukraine. I have just learned so much. And the biggest lesson for me, of course, and the whole world has seen it, is how incredibly strong and resilient Ukrainians are. And that is a lesson that I am going to keep with me forever, because it's just amazing to see. To get around those technology problems, I will record all the sessions on Zoom and I upload them to Google Classroom. I also, in the morning, I eat my breakfast and check my phone, the Washington Post, to see what happened in Ukraine over the night. That gives me an idea about how the day will go technology-wise. And I also post activities and work that we did in class on Google Classroom. So those students who are not able to go can go back at another date. I have included some quotes from students because it really is about their voices in the yellow text box. And here you can see the most important thing to her is that the class is an island of calm. And I really appreciated that, because I do work very hard to make the classroom a welcoming environment and a calm environment. Know your students is one of TESOL's 6 principles for excellence in language teaching. I've been teaching for over 30 years, and that has been the #1 tenet for me always. You have to know your students, and you do that through building strong relationships with them and allowing students to have time to work together and talk together, especially in a situation like this, to keep up that relationship going. I did not know how to approach the war. And so the first session, I simply said that. I don't know if you want to talk about the war, if you don't. And the answer resoundingly was no, they did not want to talk about the war in class. So I honor that, and we do not. Though many of them do talk to me outside of class, and you will see that in a minute. Everybody has talked about the importance of offering SEL support in and outside of class. We do check-ins, we have time for sharing, and I keep communication open with emails and messages. It's so important. So because so many times students cannot come because of electricity and other problems. I get lots of emails and I respond to each and every one of them. I will sometimes send an article that I think they will find uplifting. And that would be an article that talks about the support for Ukraine from the United States and whether that is government support, which I truly hope will continue in a strong manner as it has, but also the everyday Americans who put the Ukrainian flag in front of their business or in front of their home, who put the Ukrainian flag decal on their car, simple things to show the connection and support. I assign small group and partner work that brings out creativity. As other people have said, it's so important. I tell my students that creativity is good for one's soul, and I truly believe that it does. So even though nothing is normal, absolutely nothing is normal, I do my best that during that time together, we have a sense of normalcy and fun in the classroom. Sometimes I almost feel guilty being silly, telling a little joke, but we have to have that time for that 1.5 hours where we put the outside world away and we learn English and we have fun. This student was commenting on, we do movement breaks, whether it be a quick go noodle dance or a video that guides us through some stretching or exercise or some deep breathing activities. I would like to give just a minute that you can take a minute, because I think that this shows the importance, again, of creating a welcoming, safe environment where students' voices can be heard if they want to. These two students have written about the war and their thoughts. So I'm just going to stay quiet for a little bit so that you can look at that. I think that's very powerful, what they say. Okay, because I know my clock is running, so let me conclude. Finally, last week, a lot of people talked about needing to have more resources. So I did some research, and yes, there is also a lot on TESOL. But if you send me an email, I would be happy to share these resources with you. They're American sites, and they are about self-care for the teacher and also trauma-informed practices in the classroom, which all of us need. And finally, I'd like to close. This was another message from a student. He had been absent for the first 2 weeks, and I checked in with all my students to see what happened, if they were okay. I did not expect such a kind reply. But again, I think that that's another affirmation of the importance with open communication with the students and having a strong relationship, because this is definitely the time and place where the students need to feel safe in the classroom. And thank you so much for listening.
Thank you so much for the presenters. I am trying to be aware of the time. We have 5 minutes for discussions. Obviously, we can stay a couple of minutes if needed. Do we have any questions to the presenters? And I'm looking at the chat box.
Okay.
Natalia is asking, did Ukrainian teachers give up grading students' work?
I can take it, Natalia. So actually, no. So at the beginning of the process, when we just resume our classes, of course, we didn't grade them, or if we graded them, so that was in a form of a gamification. You know, we gave them points. We tried to give them stickers, online stickers. So that was an easier form. But we understand now that life is going on and we can't postpone this process, so we can't live a second life. So that's why we grade them and we create rubrics so they know that what they need to do, how they need to do. And yeah, we almost came back to normal, new reality. So we grade them.
Thank you, Lena. We have John, your hand is up. Would you like to state your question?
Hi, everybody. Thank you for the wonderful presentations. Very touching and interesting. I was the regional English language officer in Ukraine from 2016 to 2019. My ongoing post, my next job will be in Turkey. I know that TESOL Ukraine has had some pretty successful partnerships with TESOL Hawaii, and also currently, I think, trying to work on a program with Turkey. My question is, what can the TESOLers say was some of the most helpful assistance that you've received from other TESOL organizations? Is it connections, materials, trainings, as a way for me to maybe think about a connection between Turkey and Ukraine?
Maybe I will try to answer your question, John.
Hi, Lena.
Hi. We appreciate all kinds of support. Members of TESOL Ukraine. And as you know, now we have more than 600 people in our association. So all kinds of support is very useful, very needed by the people of Ukraine now when we are in I'm sorry for my video, lack of electricity. Let me try again. So all connections, all trainings that we've organized with our partners from TESOL Turkey, from TESOL Italy, and Hawaii, all our partnership activities with people from Association of English Teachers in Moldova. So we've managed to organize a series of webinars with all these partners, and they share materials with us. And we hope that in future we will also have very close and effective cooperation. And we also hope for your help in this aspect. As a RELO office in Turkey.
Lena, thanks so much for the answer, and let's be in touch about some of those questions. I think that there are definitely some things that we can both follow up on.
Thank you.
Can I add a few words about the sessions we had last year as from TESOL Hawaii, TESOL Italy. And you see that just at that time, they started in April, and it was very difficult time for everyone here. We really didn't know what to do, how to live, how to teach, and For example, we returned to the classes on April 1, and you see that just there was not clear understanding in what format to deliver classes because of that traumatic situation in the country. Well, and the question was just to think about students, to think about teachers, and you know how to combine all these things to just design a class taking into account emotional state of students, and what about our emotional state. For example, it's about those who stayed in Ukraine, and for example, I am from Kharkiv, and this is yeah, everyone knows this the name of this city, and it was really a very dramatic situation. It was very dangerous to stay here and to deliver classes, but nevertheless, well, the support of our colleagues from different digital organizations gave us desire to move ahead, not to stop. You see that they supported us, they were ready to share with us, presenting very necessary information. We didn't have chance to look for it here under the circumstances, and just taking part in these webinars, just getting new information, new experience, how to behave in certain situation. For me as a teacher, it was very, very valuable. You see, just it helped me a lot. And I want to thank everyone who did a lot for us. And you have been doing a lot. And I hope that we'll cooperate fruitfully.
Thank you very much,
Thank you.
Raisa. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Rita. We have one more person. The final question. Josef Horvat, you have your hands up.
Thank you for allowing me to be part of this wonderful webinar. I know some of the presenters like Judith and Fabia, Marta, and others. I just want to ask a question about teacher training. Like how can teacher training go on in such a horrible time? Like were colleagues in Bereksas and elsewhere in Ukraine able to assist the teacher trainees in their work with their students? How is that done? Can a brief answer be given to this?
We have spoken about our experience at our institution in Berehova. Actually, it is very difficult, as you understand, and I'm sure that everywhere else throughout the country, the situation is the same or even worse, because we hear the sirens, but thank God, no bombs were seen yet in our region, in Transcarpathia, unlike other parts of Ukraine. So maybe some other colleagues can answer this question in a different way. Thank you.
About my experiences, as for classes and teaching, for example, it was impossible before buying diesel engine for having internet all the time around in my apartment, even without during blackouts. So just as one side, I have to be ready to have classes while during cutoffs and blackouts. This was the one side. So the other side is that I feel that my CPD just now is progressing, because I feel support of my friends abroad. They try to help me with literature, with library access to libraries. They have desire a lot of time to help me, to learn me, to discuss. So as today's meeting, we feel your support, and this makes us stronger. And you fulfill us with the desire to learn, to train, to continue our professional development, despite all these devastating facts outside. So this is opportunity for an hour to forget, not to some extent, to forget about the war, and to try to teach, to try to learn, to develop. Thank you very much for such an opportunity. This support fills us inside.
Thank you so much. Thank you to the presenters. Thank you to the organizers and to the attendees. It has been a great experience, and we appreciate your presentations, your insights, and your stories. We are going to say goodbye, and if we can stop recording, please.